Ann Schaefer lives along the Illinois River, right outside of Griggsville, Illinois. Her late husband used to collect the many artifacts that make up the Hopewell civilization right outside of their home.
Most of this stuff was all dug. We just dug it with a screwdriver, go one dirt at a time.
Coincidentally, she lives right across the street from a significant but forgotten moment in LDS church history known as the account of Zelph's Mound. Zelph's Mound is one clue in the search for connections between the Hopewell culture and the Nephites spoken of in the Book of Mormon. In 1834, Joseph Smith traveled with a group of saints on a tour known as Zion's Camp. This camp marched from Kirtland, Ohio to western Missouri. In one stop along the banks of the Illinois River, Joseph recounted in a letter to his wife Emma the experience he had on top of this particular mound.
The whole of our journey, in the midst of so large a company of social, honest, and sincere men, wandering over the plains of the Nephites, recounting occasionally the history of the Book of Mormon, roving over the mounds of that once beloved people of the Lord, picking up their skulls and their bones as a proof of its divine authenticity, and gazing upon a country, the fertility, the splendor, and the goodness so indescribable, all serves to pass away time unnoticed.
Joseph and the brethren, during the Zion's Camp March, they left Kirtland, walked across Ohio, all of Indiana, and about 2/3 of Illinois, hit the banks of the Illinois River, and they stayed there for maybe 2 days, maybe 3, we're not sure. Well, while they were there, somebody found the large mound that we call Zelph's Mound, that Joseph identified. But they saw some things that caused them to want to dig, which they did. They found a skeleton of a man, pretty much entire. And while they were standing there, Joseph, he says, by the Spirit of the Almighty, and then he begins to tell who this person is.
They found Zelph, as the prophet was told his name was, with an arrowhead lodged in his bones. And the prophet could tell us exactly who he was, where he was from, what he did in his life, and where he had been.
Joseph said, by the Spirit of the Almighty, he identifies this man as Zelph, that he was a servant under the prophet Ondagas, who ruled from the hill Cumorah, or Eastern Sea, all the way to the Rocky Mountains. What is nice about the Illinois archaeologists, they come along in the 1970s and the 80s. They cut a trench through the mound. They date this thing originally about 250 plus or minus 100 years. And then a second group comes in from Dixon Mound, the archaeologists, and they date it at 380 AD. And Joseph's Zelph Mound says this is during one of the last great struggles of the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is over at 385. And our non-LDS academics have dated it now at 380 AD. How did Joseph know this was a Hopewell Mound? How could he put it in the time frame of the Book of Mormon? Because he was inspired. And sad to say, but the church in general doesn't even know this story. I think by the time Nauvoo was over, the saints were so battered, so hurt, so beat, and we know this. When they got to Salt Lake, they just wanted a really fresh start. And I don't think it was a direct intention, but I really think Joseph was put in a box and they just put him up on a shelf for safekeeping. And then the church kind of starts from there and goes on. That's how I look at it.